the opening game on Amazon Prime, 7:15, San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks. It's a divisional matchup, divisional game, NFC West. It's going to be a good one. It's like the opening battle in Troy. Bo Agrius versus Achilles. Bo Agrius is this huge, hulking, dominating monster like the San Francisco 49ers. And little Achilles comes out a little late, does these cool moves, ends up pulling off the upset for the underdog. I think the Seattle Seahawks, I don't know if they're the underdog in this. Maybe you can help me with that, Billy, with the over-under on this one at 49.5. Quarterbacks in this, you got Brock Purdy, Geno Smith leading the NFL in passing, I think, right now. He was also an Elite 11 winner. We'll talk about that, why that's important later. But, Billy, what do you think about these quarterbacks?
Yeah, Brock Purdy been a little bit underwhelming, but these Niners have been really unhealthy. But Deebo Samuel almost not contributing, and Juwan Jennings, if you look at it, it looks about the same, about one good week each. Brandon Ayuk, welcome back to the party last week, and hopefully he can start to build on the momentum that he started. And George Kittle, he's been top 10 last 3 games out, or top 4 actually. But George Kittle being the really mainstay in that offense. And Geno Smith really surprising everybody, coming out, slinging it around. But we have seen this offense be really inconsistent. Big weeks for everybody, and really some duds in there as well. And last week they really had a dud against the New York Giants, losing that game. Running backs, though, Jordan Mason, second in the NFL in rushing, leading the NFL in carries. That's volume that you got to have in your lineup. Really only had 1 week that wasn't playable. And Kenneth Walker Jr., now that he's back healthy, kills the Charbonnet shares that were happening. But Kenneth Walker has been doing pretty well. Top 15 in all 3 of his outings. And he's... 5 carries for 19 yards last week, but still had a top 15 week. He's starting to catch balls, and that was a knock that we had on him really kind of all the time, with Charbonnet might creep into that workload because of his ability to catch balls, but now Kenneth Walker starting to do that as well, giving him a nice floor even on those really bad, tough days to run the ball.
Absolutely. So when we look at this game, and we'll break it down just a little bit more for everyone watching live. Thank you, everyone who's watching live and listening to us the next day on Spotify, all Apple Music, everything that we go out on that you can follow us on. Next day on Twitter, Facebook, things like that, Instagram. When you look at the defense, Billy, let's start with one of the pass catchers, right? Hopefully their number one option, because whenever he's out on the field, he's a top 10 finish. Talking about your guy out of, Iowa, boy, tight end George Kittle. When he's on the field playing, he finished number 10, number 1, number 4, and number 3. The Seattle Seahawks defense overall is pretty, 15 against the quarterback, 18 against the running back, 11th against wide receivers, but against tight ends, they're number 21. So they're susceptible to the tight end position, which we like with George Kittle because he's really a wide receiver in this offense, right? And so he's finished really well when he's played. I think he's been heating up the game, oh my gosh, the basketball game from back in the 90s, NBA Jam. There we go. You're heating up, right? He's heating up. This is he finished 8 for 12. 12 targets from Brock Purdy last week, when in the 3 previous games where he finished 10, 1, and 4, he's had 17. He's almost double his targets. This week, I feel like George Kittle has more of a coming out party than he's already had on Thursday night in that quick turnaround. Everybody else, you're starting your superstars, but George Kittle, he's my tight end 2 on the week. I feel like he's going to light it up. You mentioned Jordan Mason. What's the outlook on CMC for my guys that have CMC, Billy? It's very scary.
Yeah, man, it is kind of a touchy situation, and none of the news has been very good, and a lot of it's been very ambiguous and not a lot of details. We're hearing, tendonitis in both Achilles, things like that. It's looking like he's supposed to be coming back to practice at some point, but no timeline that I'm aware of anyway. But it is a grim situation. I imagine when he comes back, the workload will not be handed to him fully, and Jordan Mason will still be fantasy relevant, but maybe not the workload that he's getting because he's averaging over 20 carries a game, and I imagine CMC will dip into that somewhat. But I don't think they're going to want to ride CMC coming off, Achilles tendonitis. They need him healthy for the playoffs.
That's very fair. When we look at JSN, a guy that you've talked about, Brandon's talked about, and DK Metcalf, a guy that we know is a top 10 wide receiver when he's on the field. He's my wide receiver 8 for the week. You look at the San Francisco defense, and they're number 10 against wide receivers. Got lockdown corners, safeties are good, linebackers can play against these guys as well. Should I temper my actions? Should managers temper their actions with JSN and DK Metcalf this week?
It's funny because we've seen them have good games and bad games, whether or not they've had good and bad matchups. But DK Metcalf's had no touchdowns in back-to-back weeks, and I think they kind of get going. This is a matchup. The Niners are a little bit susceptible on the back end of the defense, not weak necessarily, but middling defense where they're not necessarily just shutting people down. And a divisional matchup between two very good teams. I suspect that they, have some things up their sleeve for each other. Jackson Smith-Njigba, yeah, 1 out of his 5 games, he's been inside the top 30. We thought we had the coming out party guys, and we really just have not. But DK, you're probably playing this week because of, where you have him, and no reason to sit him against the 49ers, especially with the way Geno's playing.
Speaking of Geno, unlocking the very first next gen stat, Billy. Good job. Geno Smith last week ranked 16th for next gen stat on his ball carrying speed, jetting at over 20 miles an hour on his 32 yarder. Geno Smith has been lighting it up for fantasy managers, making everyone look really, really smart where they drafted him. Like I mentioned, this is the Bo Agrius versus Achilles matchup where little guy Achilles Geno in this one, right? Really takes the knockout and beats the San Francisco 49ers, I think. Are you starting Geno with confidence? For me, he's a fringe quarterback 1 this week.
Yeah, I mean it depends on your situation. If you're riding Geno, yeah, I'm playing him and I'm not too worried about him. But there are some options that would be a little bit better. I mean, maybe Purdy on the other side, a tick or two above in your rankings. But I'm not too worried about Geno. This game could have plenty of points, plenty of fireworks, and Geno could easily have a 3 touchdown game, especially coming off the hangover last week against the New York Giants. So I'm not particularly worried about it. But I mean, if you're a Derek Carr owner, Geno would be a nice fill-in.